webinar on how you can leverage SRE in your organization. I'm your host Felicjan, and I'm a marketing manager at Maxima Consulting. I'm today here with Rejith Krishnan, the CEO of Cloud Control. Rejith, please tell the audience a bit about yourself and the topic we will be talking about.
All right, thanks, Felicjan. So my name is Rejith Krishnan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cloud Control. We are a SRE as a service platform. What we do for our customers through our platform, we provide SRE as a service. That means enterprises big and small, they can use our platform to achieve what SRE provides as the benefit. Right? So we're going to talk more about SRE, what it means to a company, what value it provides, and also we are going to touch on a reference architecture. Kind of gets you an idea of what need to be implemented, whether we use our platform or other tools. You'll be able to look at our reference architecture and figure out what need to be done. Again, Felicjan, let's start.
Yeah. So, you know what? Let's start with the first topic you mentioned. Like the people here probably have heard about SRE, but please explain what it is in a bit more detail.
All right. So the idea of SRE is, it's kind of I would say, the next level of support or next level of service when it comes to DevOps. We all of us are used to DevOps and Cloud Ops. So SRE is kind of the next level. So what SRE does is, if you look at the cloud and the infrastructure today, most of it is, or all of it is software defined. So unlike the previous world where you have to go and use an interface or maybe physically buy a machine and provision it. Now it's pretty much everything has an API. So that means your entire infrastructure is software defined, which means you can write software to control it. Now, that means when it comes to application deployment, application lifecycle management, day-to-day activities in terms of monitoring it, automating the alerting, the incident management, and even applying auto scaling, auto healing, all can be done through software. So SRE uses software development principles or software engineering principles to all of IT operations. That includes provisioning hardware to provisioning application resources, all the way to monitoring it and generating alerts, etc.
Yeah, and how can companies start implementing it? So should they first hire an engineer that will look at the operations from the technical lens, or how does it look like?
Good question. So to implement the SRE, so because it's following SRE, software engineering principles, you want to ensure that you're bringing in engineers that understands IT operations, understand the application development teams. So they should be able to talk to the development team, because ultimately what you're trying to do is get what application teams or development teams want to do. You're basically automating all that so that it can run, the applications developed by developers run in a very reliable manner in an infrastructure that is software defined. So you want to hire engineers that are capable of understanding application, capable of understanding the software defined world of cloud or infrastructure today. And then they need to understand some of the automation tools and languages that they can use, right? So in order to implement, they need to understand all three aspects and then come up with an automation model, as basically scripting everything, right? So get all the information, figure out what the developers want to do, and then start coding. So, and when you code, you treat your automation like any other software that your company is developing.
Got it. Like, I have a question from the audience, from Suvik. Can you tell a brief difference between SRE and DevOps?
Yes. So SRE uses a bit more of software engineering. So DevOps, that was not like a mandate. So DevOps just meant that we are going to have Dev and Ops communicate and maybe get some of the processes streamlined. But here we are saying, hey, your software deployment process and its monitoring, its observability, its reliability, its auto scaling, all can be part of your software development process. And that means you need to hire engineers who actually want to code and automate everything. And we'll touch on a little bit of what are the components that they need to develop. So, and there are tools out there are libraries out there that you can leverage, but at the end of the day you need somebody on your team, or you want to hire a consultant who knows SRE and automate code and treat your automation like any other piece of software that you're developing.
Awesome. Like, I know, Rejith, that you have a white paper.
Yes.
Like, can you please pull up the QR code so
Yes.
people can scan it if they want to download?
So I'll put it in the top right corner.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I have another question. Like, what is the value? Like, what is the value that companies get right after they implement SRE?
All right, good question. So I do have a slide that I prepared on value. So it's a common question. So what do I get when I implement SRE? It sounds very intimidating. It's a new term. What is the value, right? So I put together 3 major points here based on the implementation that we have done so far. First of all, increasing agility. That means you now get a better time to market. So when you have new features, when you have a bug fix or an enhancement, you now have the capability to put it out there in the cloud and make it available to your customers in a faster pace. How you achieve that is basically by automating everything, of course, right? But so to get a little bit more detail, right? You want to build something that has a very flat learning curve. So you understand that's why we want when an SRE team comes in, you don't want to change the way the development team works or the operations team work. We're just basically giving them better tools and still achieve the same goals. So you want to build something that is fully automated with flat learning curve. Leverage in today's world, leverage containers and Kubernetes to achieve that, and come to a model where you can deploy application really fast, or it could be a delta change that's going in. So code or put together something that increases your agility, and so that's a core value of SRE. Number 2, reducing the risk. So since it's all automated, it's a repeatable process, and you can set the guidelines and guardrails in as part of the automation so that your risk is lower. So that means a developer will not make a mistake. If they make a mistake, the process should be able to identify them and alert them so that they can fix it. And it can reduce cost. Because it's fully automated, your development process and the deployment process is faster now, so it's more efficient. Second, since we, as part of the SRE, we are going to put observability, auto scaling, and auto healing in place, it also reduces the cost. Hope I covered that, right? And so those are kind of the 3 top things that I see. And at the end of the day, the goal is to build something that is fully automated, that can get you the reliability that you need, resilience that you need for your applications, and it can scale, right?
Yeah. So I have a question here from Pradeep. Like, what role does SRE play in disaster recovery and business continuity planning when it comes to cloud-based systems?
Awesome. So when it comes to DR and business continuity, again, automation is the theme here. So you can automate. Like, for example, I'll give you a good example. Let's say you have your application running in region 1. You could parallelly set up something in region 2. And since it's completely automated, you now can say, hey, I'm going to put some replication between the two, automate that, and I'm only going to run the replication during the regular business hours when everything is normal, or during the business as usual, it will just replicate the data while all my compute on the region 2 is down. But since I have only completely automated it, I know what trigger to pull to bring that up. So let's say region 1 goes down for any reason. Now all you need to do is follow the process. And in most SRE implementations, they use something called Git ops, which is basically you trigger everything through Git. So where you say, hey, I want primary is down, region 1 is down. Now I want to bring up region 2. All I need to do is go and find that repo where that process gets triggered in terms of bringing up region 2. You go and do a commit, get all the approvals that you need, and merge into the branch that the SRE platform is watching, and push that change. Now what happens is the automation will kick in. The data is already replicated. It will go and validate if the data is up to date, and if the databases are all up and all the data sources are healthy, and then it will bring up all the compute, all done automatically. So as an SRE engineer, you want to build this system in place so that a push of a button, which means in this case it's a git commit, that can trigger the entire DR site to come up.
I have a question that perfectly aligns to your answer, because you talked a lot about automation and how it all works, but Mina asked, how can SRE teams balance the need for automation with the need for human intervention and oversight in critical systems?
Very good question.
That's something that I believe many business people are thinking about.
Right. Very good question. So you know what, I can actually display the question as well. Okay, there you go. Okay, so
perfect.
So it's a very good question. So when it comes to automation, that is one of the questions that one of the concerns that I hear from most of our customers. Hey, everything is automated, then what am I doing, right? And that question will come from managers, marketing people, business people, and also from testers. So the idea is to automate, but you want to make sure there are checkpoints. And one way to do that is, of course, from a technical side, you can have checkpoints within Git where somebody makes a change and request for an update or a deployment. You can have peer reviews configured in Git as part of the automation. So that means there is a checkpoint. It triggers a PR review or a pull request review in Git, so that your technical team can review it, or a peer can review it, or a manager can review it before the request is merged into a branch that the SRE is automating. Second thing is, you can also put things like Jira or ServiceNow as part of the automation, where when you're deploying something to a higher environment like production or staging, you can involve people in the workflow where the automation will do all the technical side, then it will stop and wait for a human to approve it. And you can configure that in many systems. One of the common, or a couple of common systems that we use are Jira and ServiceNow. So you want to introduce that workflow with human approvals in place, where the automation just stops, waits for a human to review what happened so far and what change is going in, maybe display a release notes in front of them, let them look at that, and let them push a button either to approve or reject before the workflow proceeds to the next step.
Awesome. Like, lots of questions just came in, but I want to jump on the next slide that we have prepared. Can you walk us through the process of implementation of SRE? Like, if someone is already convinced, like, what should they expect?
Sure. So I put together this slide. It's a reference implementation based on our implementation at different customers. So the way I look at this is, on the right-hand side, you have infrastructure. In this case, it could be Kubernetes clusters, VMs in Azure, AWS, Google, or on-prem. And on your left-hand side, you have the people. So this diagram kind of gives you an idea. What are the different roles of the people involved? and how that kind of connects to a deployment or a fix that's going into the right-hand side, which is running in the infrastructure. So this is a very high-level reference implementation architecture where there is a system in the middle, which is the pipeline that is connecting all that. Now, what is in the pipeline? This is where all the automation goes in. So the SRE engineer is basically orchestrating all the automation and implementing all these individual pipeline components to connect all the dots, meaning connect the people on the left-hand side to the infrastructure on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I just muted my microphone, but a few of the questions that popped up were related to new technologies. So what would you say? What are some emerging trends and technologies in the field of SRE? It's a question from Atul.
All right. So we have a set of tools that we use, and there are tons of content in Google. You can Google up and learn more about SRE. But when it comes to I can kind of answer this question from a reference implementation standpoint. For example, in order for you to build this architecture, so let's look at the different aspects of this particular architecture. Right, on the left-hand side, you have the people, and remember, when you implement GitOps, when you implement SRE, one of the primary components is Git. So there are different options. I'm sure a lot of us, or at least heard about GitHub, GitLab, and Azure as Azure ADO, and AWS as AWS Code Commit. So you want to start your process on the left-hand side with a Git repository. So the idea is when people want to request something, it could be a deployment, it could be a bug fix, it could be a day two activity. You want to be able to have them commit a manifest into your Git repository along with other artifacts that will trigger the process. So a Git repository is an important component. Now moving on to the right-hand side, you can see that you need three major components. You need a Git ops engine. There are multiple ways to implement it. And the quickest way you can get started is by leveraging some of the Git platforms. For example, in GitLab and GitHub, there are CI/CD tools built into it. So you can leverage that and then add plugins and additional code to make it work for you. So one example would be GitHub Actions. So you can start with GitHub Actions. It might get you a starter where you can start coding, start figuring out how to connect all these things together, and then you can improve from there. Now, when it comes to the pipeline itself, you'll need separate different things. I'll touch on a couple of them. You definitely will need a way to build. So you want to be able to connect, say, Maven, NPM for Node, maybe Gradle, based on what your developers' choices are. So you should be able to incorporate that into the pipeline. Then comes code quality check. Of course, SonarQube is a good example. And there are several plugins you can enable to enable code quality checks. And then comes, the image management. You can use, open source tools, or you can use, say, Artifactory or Nexus, or cloud providers have their own repositories. You can leverage them. And then you definitely want to enable code scanning or image scanning in this process. So the common ones we use are ECR and ACR. They both have ECR is from AWS and ACR is Azure's. They have their own scanners. You can enable that. That is part of the cloud contract that you sign with them. Or you can bring in external tools like Sneak or Veracode. Those are some of the options you have to get the image scanned. Now, once the image is it's safe and set in the repository, you now have you need a deployment manager. So we build our own deployment manager. There are tools out there that you can use. Like one of the most common examples is Helm. You can use Helm to deploy if you're Kubernetes oriented. If you think you want to deploy to VMs, I recommend Ansible or Terraform to do that part of the interface to the infrastructure can be those tools. Now, in between, you definitely want something to, I think that goes back to Minna's question. You want something to approve things. So that's where, ServiceNow or Jira will come into play. So you want to integrate those tools so that people who are outside of the Git world, they can approve, like your testing manager or your business analyst. If they want to approve it, they can approve it in a non-technical environment or non-technical tool like ServiceNow or Jira. Now, the most important tool here is all the way to the right-hand side, you see observability. Now, when it comes to SRE, and in order for you to leverage the advanced features of SRE, which is auto-healing, auto-scaling, automated alerting, in order to do that, you need to collect data. Now, so it's important to have a good observability stack. The observability stack that you want to use from the open source world would be, and that is, we had great success with it, is Prometheus for the time series data, and Elastic for all the logs. So you want to collect the logs, you want to collect the performance statistics in terms of resource utilization into Prometheus. You want to be able to then use Prometheus as alert manager to generate alerts. Now, also you can use Grafana for dashboards. So you can put Grafana in front of the Prometheus and Elastic to see different visualization. And when it comes to incident management, when there is an alert, we use Slack to alert someone. You can also use emails, you can use Jira. And also when it comes to escalations, some of the things that we do are we integrate with Zapier. So when something comes to Slack, we integrated Zapier. So Zapier will do an escalation when somebody doesn't respond. If it's taking too long to fix a problem, Zapier escalates, and the Zapier then uses Twilio to make calls to people if somebody need to be alerted through phone. So those are some of the tools. I know it's a long list, but at least it gives you an idea, how that the current this particular reference architecture can be implemented.
I was going to say that it can be quite robust when you start talking about it and really to grasp all those things. So if you were to give advice, like 2 pieces of advice to someone who's thinking about implementing SRE, what would you advise them?
So I would say start with something that is connected to your Git. So there is Git. If you're using GitLab or GitHub, they have hooks into starting the SRE process. So start from the left. Understand what the developer's current workflow is, and if there is no branching strategy, train them on a good branching strategy. That is a starting point. So the idea is to get the right reviews done before it actually hits the SRE platform, right? So then you start building the pipeline. The pipeline can trigger from Git and start building. From the left, you start building the pipeline, and make sure that that you start by making sure that you have a good build mechanism, good source of base images, and then you have a code quality. So you start from the left and start going towards the right. And once the deployment part is done, then look for opportunities to improve your observability. So that's where I would start, because you always need some place to start, and you need quick wins. So the best way to start is from the left side and go to the deployment, and then try to close the loop using a good observability stack.
Exactly. Like you have to look for those low-hanging fruits, pick them, and then build on the success that you've had before.
Exactly.
So, Rejith, it was great today. Like I know that you have also the white paper. If you could please tell the audience what they can find there, and
Right. So please, use this QR code to reach our site where you can put your email, and we can get you the link to download our white paper. that white paper covers in detail our implementation and our experience implementing SRE at different enterprises, big and small. And we had great success with startups as well. So the idea is to get maximum resilience and maximum scalability for your applications while the developers are really productive and your cost of ownership is low. That's what you can achieve by using the right SRE approach. And we cover a good chunk of that in our white paper. So please do use this QR code to download it.
Yeah. There have been lots of questions today on the chat. We'll make sure to answer them in the next webinars. So yeah, make sure to follow our LinkedIn pages so you will be alerted about them. And well, thank you very much for today, Rejith.
Thank you. Thanks, Felicjan. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.